Hello, everyone. I'm Tanya Rivero. Thank you for joining us. We begin this hour with an exclusive CBS News interview with President Trump. Our senior investigative correspondent, Catherine Herridge, spoke with the president on several issues, including the coronavirus pandemic, as well as social and racial justice reform.
Let's talk about George Floyd. You said George Floyd's death was a terrible thing.
Terrible.
Why are African Americans still dying at the hands of law enforcement in this country?
And so are white people. So are white people. What a terrible question to ask. So are white people. More white people, by the way. More white people.
Hi, Catherine. Welcome. So great to have you with us. So there is so much going on in the nation right now, primarily as coronavirus cases surge across the country. Did you talk with the president about whether he is formulating a consistent message as to how we should be combating the virus?
Well, Tanya, we began with the president's weekend trip to Walter Reed, where he wore a face mask publicly for the first time. And I asked him whether he was sending a message. And when I pressed him further, he said people should follow the guidelines from the CDC as well as those of their governors, and that he is okay with mask wearing. He refused to say that his position has evolved over time, but that he feels very comfortable telling people to wear masks as they see appropriate. We also asked him, I think, about the issue that is so pressing for families across this country, because we're just about a month away from the traditional open of the fall semester. And here's that exchange on school openings.
The Los Angeles School District is the latest and one of the largest in the country to say they're not going back to school in the fall.
Mistake.
What do you tell parents and teachers who feel that it's unsafe to go back?
I would tell parents and teachers that you should find yourself a new person, whoever's in charge of that decision, because it's a terrible decision. Because children and parents are dying from that trauma too. They're dying because they can't do what they're doing. Mothers can't go to work because all of a sudden they have to stay home and watch their child, and fathers. What's happening? You know, there's a tremendous strain on that whole side of the equation.
So it's a balancing act.
It is a balancing act, but that we have to open our schools. But I also say a decision like that is politics, because we're starting to do very well in the polls, because I'm for law and order. I'm for strong business. Our jobs are coming back at a record level like we've never seen anything like it, record level. We're heading up. It's turning out to be the V, just like I built it once before, the strongest economy ever. I'm doing it again. And they don't want that to happen because they think
Who's the they?
They is the Democrats.
I also asked the president about the testing issue, and a new report today from one of the major labs here in the United States that the average wait time is about 7 days to get your results back. And the president told me that he's in favor of expanding what I would describe as fast-track testing results. These are rapid tests. They're not as accurate as laboratory tests, but you can get results on these on-site testing sometimes within 45 minutes to an hour, Tanya.
And Catherine, some of the president's critics are claiming that he instigated a so-called culture war in response to Black Lives Matter and some of the other movements that have been going on in this country. You touched on this with the president in your interview. What is his view on the matter?
Well, I had a short exchange with the president on the issue of the battleground Confederate flag and how he felt that fit into the conversation about freedom of speech and how it was a symbol that was deeply hurtful to many Americans. Here's that exchange.
President Trump, back in 2015, you said the Confederate battle flag belongs in a museum. Do you still believe that?
All I say is freedom of speech. It's very simple. My attitude is freedom of speech. Very strong views on the Confederate flag. With me, it's freedom of speech, very simple. Like it, don't like it, it's freedom of speech.
Would you be comfortable with your supporters displaying the Confederate battle flag at political events?
You know, it depends on what your definition is, but I am comfortable with freedom of speech. It's very simple.
But you understand why the flag is a painful symbol for many people, because it's a reminder of slavery.
Well, people love it, and I know people that like the Confederate flag, and they're not thinking about slavery. I look at NASCAR, you go to NASCAR, you had those flags all over the place, they stopped it. I just think it's freedom of speech, whether it's Confederate flags or Black Lives Matter or anything else you want to talk about. It's freedom of speech.
And I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about that issue for a number of obvious reasons. To the president's credit, we asked several very direct questions of him, and he answered all of our questions, Tanya.
Indeed. And Catherine, you know, there's still speculation that a phase 2 trade deal with China could be on the horizon. Did the president indicate where that relationship currently stands?
Well, a little bit of the backstory. In January of this year, January 15th, the Chinese delegation came here to Washington, D.C., and they signed what's called Phase 1 of the trade talks. And the president made the point today that within about a week of that period, he said barely the ink was dry on that phase of the deal when the global community was hit with COVID-19. And I pressed him on whether this was going to be a way of accountability for the Chinese government, that the U.S. would not move forward on phase 2 of these talks. I think this is one of the most newsy exchanges of the entire interview, so listen.
Is phase 2 of the trade talks with China dead?
I'm not interested right now in talking to China.
So is
I've
it
always
on
had a tough
hold, on the
stance.
back burner?
Look, we made a great trade deal, but as soon as the deal was done, the ink wasn't even dry, and they hit us with the plague, okay? So right now, I'm not interested in talking to China about another deal.
I followed up and asked the president whether accountability equated to holding the Chinese government accountable at the negotiating table. And he went on to say that it's for me to know what accountability looks like, not you at this stage. So I felt like there's another level of action the U.S. will take that involves China, that goes beyond putting these phase 2 trade talks on ice, at least for the time being.
Well, still, it sounds like that trade deal doesn't look promising at the moment. All right. Well, Catherine Herridge, thank you so much for sharing your insight with us into your interview with the president. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And a quick programming note, you can stream more of Catherine's interview with President Trump coming up in our next hour on Red and Blue right here on CBSN. And you can watch Catherine's complete interview with the president on the CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell. And that is tonight at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, only on CBS.